Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, September 27th, 2024. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Jonah Booker in just a moment. Buckeyes with their first road contest, first Big Ten game, all wrapped into one tomorrow night at Michigan State. 7:30, games on Peacock. We'll have the post-game show for you, what we learned live right after the game. So a lot to get into. J-Book and I are going to do our predictions. And we're going to talk about a lot of Ohio State football topics. And it's a big weekend in college football. I'm curious to get J-Book's take on the Georgia-Alabama matchup. You got Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, Penn State. So some good games around the country. Before we do that, I'll let you know about our friends at Manscaped. Love Manscaped. And they've got a great deal for you guys. All right, guys, it's the best time of the year. Football is back. We're talking NFL Sundays, college football Saturdays, and that glorious grind of fantasy football lineups. This is where your inner GM comes alive, setting the perfect fantasy roster, screaming at your TV and making last-minute waiver moves that either make you a hero or the guy everyone ridicules in the group chat. But listen, while you're over here making sure your fantasy team is dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench. Let's be honest, nobody wants to fumble their grooming routine. That's where Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code Bucknuts at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code Bucknuts at manscaped.com. Stay on top of your grooming game and be ready for anything the season throws your way. All right. Let's bring in the one and only J-Book. Love Fridays with J-Book. Good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Doing well. All right. Let's just cut to the chase. All right. I got my prediction on my phone here. You go first, as usual.
Buckeyes, 49. Michigan State, 7.
I'm not that close as usual. I got 42-13.
Ooh, a little different this time. Hey,
42-13. Yeah, you got 49. Say it again. You have 49-7?
49-7.
Oh, wow. You're just going for the crush, going for the kill shot. I like your score better than mine. Let's go with J-Book's score.
Yeah, hey,
go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say 13 points, Dave. Back-to-back weeks. Defense giving up more than 7. What are you feeling?
Yeah, it gave me a little trepidation that the quarterback for Marshall could run. Now, hopefully that'll wake Ohio State up and they realize, because Aiden Childs can run the football. I mean, he's very raw. He throws a beautiful ball sometimes. It's just a lot of times the other team ends up intercepting it. So he makes a lot of mistakes, but this kid's going to be a good quarterback eventually. He's just so raw right now. But I just that quarterback run, they better know that that's going to be a huge part of Michigan State's game plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest worries, Dave. Aiden Childs is going to throw it up for grabs. If Boston College DBs didn't have a bunch of butterfingers, they probably would have had 6 interceptions that game. He did throw 3, 7 on the year so far, but there was probably another 3 to 4 last week that should have been intercepted that was dropped by defensive backs. So our DBs will have the opportunity to get their hands on the football. You mentioned a run. That's probably one of the things that worries me the most about this game. The biggest thing about Marshall is we look at it and says, yes, the Buckeyes defense held them to 14 points. And you can probably say that was on sheer athleticism, just out-talent those guys. Marshall's quarterback went out. There was a segment during that game where Marshall was dictating the pace, especially early on. In that game, and a lot of that was because the quarterback was able to pull the ball down and go. During this Michigan State game, if Aiden Childs' first read is not open, Dave, he will pull that football down and go. Against Boston College, they take away the sacks because he was sacked 2 times. He ended up with 57 yards rushing, had a little over 70 if you were not to count the sack numbers against his rushing total. So if that first read is not open, he will pull it down. So what does that mean for our defense? The defensive ends have to stay home. One thing that Ryan Day really complained about, guys were getting upfield a little too much, starting to freelance on their own. Defensive linemen starting to worry about sacks. He specifically called out Jack Sawyer and JT saying, hey, those guys can't worry about their sack numbers. They need to be able to play the defense. Once those guys started to freelance a little bit, it left the linebackers a little flat foot. They weren't triggering like they're supposed to. So when you're going up against a guy like Aiden Childs with that type of athleticism, probably, and I would say without a doubt, the most athletic quarterback that they've seen so far this year. If they're not playing gap sound defense, he will make them pay. What's the weather? Is the weather saying that it may rain? I think it's going to be 4 hours straight leading up to kickoff. That's going to be a grass field up at Sparty. So the conditions on the field's probably going to be wet and soggy. I'm not sure what the forecast is looking like for kickoff.
Let me look that up as we are talking here. I'm going to get your thoughts on while I'm looking that up. I mean, I wanted to ask you about the right guard situation. The Lakota boys rotating in there. I don't know how to feel about that. Like, I get it both sides to a certain degree. You know, Austin's Cyberveld kind of has earned the right to play, but Teger's starting, so they're rotating those guys at right guard. Yeah. One from Lakota West, Teger, whether from Lakota East, Austin. But, like, cohesion, as you know, is so important on the offensive line. I feel like, you know, Tegra needs all the snaps he can get. What do you make of them rotating at right guard?
Typically, I would agree, Dave, but I kind of like it. I kind of like what they're doing here because they're getting valuable reps for both guards here. And the thing about it, Dave, is once those guys were rotating in, there wasn't a significant drop off in play. I thought the offensive line played extremely well when it came to the run game here. The run game is where we're going to make our bread and butter. I thought those guys played extremely well. The addition of Donovan Jackson greatly enhanced that run game there. So I do kind of like it. Now, they're going to get tested against this Michigan State defensive line. The one thing that you can say about the defensive line is they will get after you. I think they have 7-8 sacks or something along those lines during the season. So Michigan State, they're going to put a little bit of pressure on Will Howard. The thing that worries me, Dave, is how will Josh Fryer hold up when it comes to pass protection? That's the biggest question mark to me. I'm good with the guards. I think the guards are going to be okay regardless. Now, the one thing to keep an eye on here, Dave, is will they rotate in Big Ten play? You can get away with that those first 3 weeks to say, hey, we're going to rotate our guards because of who the opponent is. Now, once we get into the Big Ten play, will they continue to do that? That's something to keep an eye on.
All right, here's something to keep an eye on. Your weather forecast, courtesy of the National Weather Service. I'm going to put my weatherman hat on real quick. Here we go. East Lansing, Michigan. It's going to be raining pretty much all day, and then it might taper off in the evening. Here's what we're looking at. So 7 p.m., 51% chance of showers, wind about 9-10 miles an hour at 7 p.m. Then it drops to 24% chance of rain at 8 o'clock, ticks back up to 32% chance of rain at 9 o'clock, and then down to 24% chance at 10 o'clock. So looks like it looks like it's going to be pouring all day long in the east. That might taper off a little bit in the evening. But, yeah, they got to get ready for a wet football game. At least it's not going to be extremely strong winds. We're talking 9 mile an hour, 10 mile an hour winds. So that's good. But, hey, at least this Buckeye team has shown they can run the football with the best of them. So that'll be a fun test for them.
That's the beautiful thing about having an elite rushing attack, Dave. It doesn't matter if it's September, October, November, December, January. Doesn't matter if it's rain, sleet, snow, shine. An elite running attack can travel anywhere, on the road, at home, in a neutral site. Doesn't matter. If you can run the football, it travels regardless of where you're at in the circumstances. So that's something I'm very comfortable with. I'm sure that it's going to be a slow track with that much rain. I'm sure Michigan State probably grew out the grass a little bit. The old Northwestern trick. Remember how Northwestern, you were basically playing in weeds anytime you went to Northwestern Stadium when Ohio State was coming to town. They would let the grass grow out. So it's definitely going to probably be a slow track here. If you're an over-better, that might be something that I shy away from here just because of the conditions leading up to the game. Now, with that being said, the question mark to me is, can the defense get off the field on the third down? Because Aiden Childs is one that can extend drives with his legs. If we can get into a game here where they can put him away, force him to get out of his comfort zone, throw the football, he's going to put up some couple INTs here. So just pound that football away. And if they can do that, they should get out of there just fine.
That's right. I'm looking forward to it, man. Obviously it's an Ohio State football game, but it's like Marshall was actually a step up, and then this is a step up
Yeah.
from that. Big Ten play on the road at night. I love it. I think Michigan State made a really good hire with Jonathan Smith.
Yeah.
He just inherited a mess, so that's going to take him at least till next year. He's got his quarterback though. That's
right.
That's huge. It's a good step. Bringing your quarterback with you. All right,
Because if you look at it, you look at Aiden Child's numbers, Dave. He went on the road to Maryland and threw for 363 and pulled them out of the fire. Maryland probably should have won that game. Mike Locksley blew it. They had Michigan State up against the ropes, and they let them get out of there. And Aiden Childs hit them with some haymakers, some deep throws. So he has shown the propensity to be able to throw the football when needed. He's going to like I mentioned earlier, he's going to throw a couple up for grabs. So it's going to be a great test. As you're getting ready to gear up to go to Oregon against Dylan Gabriel, they're similar type of quarterbacks when it comes to guys who can make you pay with their legs if you ask them to. He's not on the level as throwing the football as Gabriel, but he has almost 900 yards thrown on the season so far, so he can throw it up. I think they have a couple banged up guys at their skill position. They're going to get one or two guys back who have been out. Michigan State, they've dealt with a lot of injuries so far. Any news on the Ohio State front as far as injuries? Ty Leak's supposed to be back. It sounds like he practiced this week. But the one thing that I really like about the SEC, Dave, leading up to the game, you get those availability reports that they now require the SEC commissioner. When it comes to the Buckeyes, they may pull a last second, 1 hour before kickoff, who's available, who's not, guys that you weren't expecting to be in. Have you heard anything regarding the health?
I was going to get to that. Yes, let's. So Greg, others have asked about it. We'll put Greg from YouTube up here. Do we have anybody out going into this game? Here's the thing. Patrick and I switch each week doing the availability report. We'll get a heads up. Jerry Emming will usually give us a heads up before we can actually release it. So I was a little surprised. I hadn't heard anything about Ty Leak. I was tipped off going into the first week that Cody wouldn't play. And we knew about Donovan Jackson might not play the first week. But I haven't heard anything. I didn't hear anything about Ty Leak. There's always a surprise on there. That's why I don't want to say a clean bill of health. You never know. No, and they're doing a good job with load management where if guys could play, but they, it's early in the season, they feel they can get by without them, that they'll hold them out because it sounds like Donovan Jackson probably could have played those first 2 weeks if necessary. Sounds like Ty Leak probably could have played last week. So I think they're going to get Ty Leak back, and they missed Ty Leak. I mean, there's a big drop-off from Ty Leak to Hero Canoe.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. What do you make of them not starting Caden McDonald and starting Hero Canoe in that place? Like Hero wasn't ready. That was a prime example of a guy having the opportunity right at his hands to really take that next step. You get the opportunity to start in place of Ty Leak, and he really didn't show up like you were hoping. Caden McDonald had been playing fantastic football all year. That one was a head scratcher for me.
Larry is too into 1 tech and 3 tech have to be separate. I mean, everybody who I trust who's played defensive lines, listen, 1 tech and 3 tech should really be interchangeable. Yeah, I get it. You want one guy who's more stout against the run, one who's a more, a pass rusher. And ironically, Ty Hamilton at 295 is the 1 tech. Ty Leak at 330 is the 3 tech because Ty Leak is so good at rushing the passer. I'm with you. I just would have put Caden McDonald in there with Ty Hamilton, and Hero just wasn't ready. Tywone Malone played better than Hero did. Tywone's a 3 tech. I'm with you, man. I would have just put Caden McDonald and Ty Hamilton out there to start.
You're looking at Caden McDonald. He's 6'3", 325. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're getting a massive drop off in stoutness right there in the middle. No diddy. And so you see Caden McDonald and you're thinking hey, this kid can go. He's been playing fantastic football. Let's continue to progress him and give him the start to see what he can do. That was a head scratcher. It always seems like there's 1 to 2 to 3 games that makes you scratch your head when it comes to the defensive line, Dave. Every year, Jim, and somebody said it here in the comment, Jim Knowles was not happy this week with the defense. Yeah, there you go. They didn't award anybody as defensive player of the week. He said it wasn't up to the standards, and I think it's fantastic mentality, Dave. You only give up 14 points, but they were grumpy. Ryan Day said he's not happy about anything
I love
this week.
that.
What do you feel good about? Nothing. I don't
Nothing.
feel good about anything right now. I thought that was very fascinating that the mentality has kind of changed and shifted to where, hey, 14 points against Marshall, we should have shut them down. Not good enough. Defensive line didn't play good enough. Guys freelancing. Linebackers didn't play downhill. Sonny Styles graded out as the second worst defensive player on the entire roster. Like, don't know what's going on with there. I mean, we can have a separate conversation about how Arvell Reese is probably your best natural linebacker on the team. And then what Jim Knowles said, that like they're not going to deviate from him because he's destined for greatness. I think he said something along those lines this week.
Let's talk more about the linebackers. Christopher on YouTube. I mean, he says, I hope James Laurinaitis can get the linebacker room together. They are tackling bad and taking bad angles. Yeah, and I asked Jim Knowles this week. I said, "What do you?" And he's a great about not throwing his guys under the bus. So I knew he wasn't going to be like. I knew he wasn't happy, but I was like, "What do you like about the linebackers? What don't you like so far? What do you need to see them improve?" And he said, "Overall, I think they're playing well." Then he immediately went to, "We got to tackle better." I mean, they're missing too many tackles, and I don't agree with the philosophy of they never tackle in practice at Ohio State. They never bring them actually to the ground. I feel like to be a good tackling team, you have to practice it. But I also get you don't want to do it too much because you don't want to get your guys hurt. Then people are on podcasts are going to be like, why are they tackling in practice and getting their guys hurt? I get it. But I still feel like you can't be a good tackling team if you don't practice it. I don't know.
Yeah. Remember when Urban was here with Chris Ash and they brought in the rugby style tackling day and how good that 2014 team was with tackling and limiting the explosive plays with that rugby style tackling. And one of the talking points was we really love this style of tackling because we're able to do it in practice. And so once the games come around, it's kind of secondhand nature. That kind of just jumps in my head. Like, you should be able to teach proper tackling technique in practice to where you're not having to worry about guys getting so banged up that it's preventing you from doing fundamental basics once the game comes around. When it comes to the linebackers, the first couple weeks they played a little bit better, but the one thing that a lot of people were hoping this year and they were anticipating, they thought Sonny Styles with his athleticism and size was going to make a big jump compared to what we were seeing in the past couple of years with Steele and Tommy. Everybody was anticipating that CJ Hicks was going to take that next jump. We haven't seen it from CJ Hicks. He's probably getting 10, 12 snaps most right now. But I think clearly after these last 3 weeks, Arvell Reese is the best linebacker on the roster. He's the best natural linebacker on the roster. I truly believe, and it's probably not going to go over well with the fan base, but I think that there needs to be a little bit more of Arvell and Cody Simon playing next to each other. It really scares me when you watch that Michigan game versus USC, Dave. You bottle Michigan up for 98% of the time. You hold them under 3 yards per carry. And in one instance, you get out of your gap, they will hit a home run and make you pay. That's going to be the same story when they play Michigan this year, Dave. They're going to bottle them up. They're going to shut them down in the run game. And all it takes is one linebacker getting out of their gap, and they're going to hit a home run. So to me, when you look at those linebackers, you have to ask the question, is Sonny progressing like you want? If the question is no, and you think Arvell is ascending, then the natural order would be, okay, let's start to figure out how we can get Arvell more reps. Because once we start to get into the bulk of the Big Ten play, because you got a nice little stretch there with Nebraska, Penn State, those teams coming up down the pipeline that you necessarily think that you should win those games, but they start to get it starts to get a little tricky when the landmines get there. So what do you think they should do, Dave? I personally think that a little bit more Arvell next to Cody Simon might be a great recipe for that linebacker core. and try to mix Sonny in there as you can. I hate to throw in the towel on CJ Hicks because I truly believe he should be on the edge working in Larry Johnson's room. But I'm almost to the point to where you probably need to make that switch with CJ Hicks next year before you get anything from him.
I'm with you on Arvell Reese, and I know Jim Knowles, was asked specifically about that multiple times, and he said we have a structured plan for greatness for Arvell. It's kind of funny how he said that, but that basically means like we have a plan. He really can't do too much right now, is how I read that. But I'm like, he looks like your best linebacker. I don't know. Whatever you're doing with the plan is looking good. Can we enhance the plan a little bit? But I'm with you. Back to rugby tackling for a second. I'm glad you brought that up. So is Greg on Facebook. By the way, do you remember Chris Ash? Speaking of Chris Ash and rugby style tackling, do you remember him saying the day before the national championship game against Oregon, they were practicing tackling to the ground?
Yeah.
He felt it was safe. Yeah, there's always some risk if you're tackling somebody to the ground, but they felt it was safe. They were practicing tackling the day before the national championship game. And that team, as you mentioned, they won the national championship. They had the least amount of missed tackles of any Division I team in college football that year.
Right. Yeah, and it always puzzled me because you went away from it, and I understand each defensive coordinator has their philosophy on how it should be done, but it's the physicality of it, Dave. I mean, what did Josh Fryer say last week, which was kind of head scratching? Josh Fryer said last week, talking to the media, that when it came to practices last year, he never really got tired in practice compared to this year where he's tired after practice. And the one thing that stood out in my mind is, one, why would you say that? And two, it's a you remember when Urban Meyer said, when it comes to practice, I want the practices to be so hard, so physical that come Saturday, it feels like a walk in the park because you went out Tuesday through Thursday in those three practices. Monday was typically for the younger guys. Tuesday through Thursday, those practices were so hard that once the game come around, you thought that it was an actual picnic in the park because you were getting after it those weeks. When Josh Fryer said, "Hey, I never got tired in practice last year," I was just like, "Ah, man, that's something that you probably don't want to hear from your starting veteran right tackle who hasn't necessarily played great over the last 2 years to say." I thought that was a little eye opening.
Yeah, I don't like hearing that at all, and I'm sure the coaches don't like him putting that out there. But beyond that, I don't like the coaches not working them hard enough.
Yeah.
I mean, again, what they would tell you is, well, we don't want to, it's a long season. They'll give you all that. We might want to keep guys fresh. We've been banged up at the end of the last few years. Okay. I think both things can be true. I think you can ramp it up a little bit. I'm not saying you got to kill the guys in practice, but Josh Fryer should not be saying, I never get tired in practice. That's beyond the pale right there, my friend.
I mean, that right there, because that's when you get after it, man. You would think as an offensive lineman going against this defensive line unit that you come out of that practice like, man, we battled today. You go in there, dap your boys up and like, hey man, we were battling today. Like, I'm wore out, man. I was going against JT. I was going against, Jack Sawyer, Caden Curry, and we were out there just getting after each other. And you just wear yourself out. And then you get into the game, you're like, I'm not going up against anybody as far as talent and the composite of waves of defensive linemen that was sent at me during practice. So I would think that, hey, the games are much easier than what it was in practice. But I guess not, man. I guess not. But, you look at Urban, though, and I will say this to play the devil's advocate, a lot of the things that Urban did, you probably couldn't get away with in today's era of football. I mean, you're talking about old school, hardcore. We're gonna make sure that you guys are, giving it every ounce. What is it? What was his saying? A to B, three, the whole second thing, like
4 to 6 A to B.
Yeah, 46 A to B. That was Urban's thing there. I still think that you can, teach fundamentals and guys can go hard. But as far as pushing the buttons as much as Urban did, I don't know how much today's era of kids will respond to that.
We have a listener in Wales. I love it hearing from when we have people overseas like listening to the show. That's awesome. I want to get your thoughts. Switching gears, our friends up north, the Wolverines. I mean, it feels like bad things are going to be coming eventually. I don't know when the NCAA. Well, I do know because the notice of allegations, Michigan has to respond by the week of the Ohio State game, the Monday of the Ohio State game, which is hilarious. I want to get your thoughts on the detectives from 11 Warriors, just doing great work. I'm sure you've been following that with Premium Drum and Brohio and
Yeah.
like 22 Bucker, but I forget the last guy's name. I'm sorry. 22, I believe. Those guys they're just doing it just, as a hobby. It's been fun to follow. We've got like a 1,000,000-page thread on Bucknuts, and everybody's like, this is like the best thread ever. Just your thoughts on the investigative work those gentlemen are doing.
Yeah, shout out to those guys. Excellent work. It's been very entertaining. Love reading their work that they've been doing as far as digging into what's happening up at Michigan. It's one of those situations where naturally you would think that these guys should be punished for everything that they've been done, but the NCAA is so cut at the knees right now that it's hard to trust that they're going to be able to do what's right, which is make sure that those guys feel the wrath of what they were able to get away with. I'm curious, Dave, how the athletic director, how they maneuver. If Michigan loses 2 more games, would an athletic director try to pull a hey, let's sit out this year as far as any type of bowls to try to lesser the punishment coming down the pipeline there? Because I always hark back to their athletic director basically standing up for himself and say he's not going to let the Michigan faithful try to pin all of this on him when a lot of the activity that happened took place with guys who are no longer with the program, and they, meaning Sharon Moore, him, the guys that are there, and the kids, they're left with cleaning up the mess of the guys that are no longer within the program. So I can see their defense is going to say, hey, that wasn't us. That was those guys. They're no longer with the program any longer. So let's blame them. We'll take a bowl ban just so that we can say, hey, we did something. I don't know if that's going to work, but I'm curious to see if that's something that comes down the pipeline.
Maybe if they did that before the season, it might have worked. I still don't think so. I think the NCAA is pissed off that they've just been blocking them, interfering with the investigation, haven't cooperated. And it's not just – and it was two things. It was like the kind of minor thing compared to the cheating scandal. It was more than a hamburger, but it was – I don't know why everybody reported it was Harbaugh buying a recruit a cheeseburger. No, it was about them practicing during COVID when they were not allowed to do that and some other stuff. So they're already busted for that. Now they're going to get busted for the cheating scandal, which is much worse. I think they're going to get hammered. I think the NCAA is going to tell them to go fly a kite. If they think they can just say, we're going to do a bowl ban after we lose 3 games this year, they're going to be like, you weren't going to make the playoff anyway, guys. That ain't going to work.
I haven't talked to you since last Saturday, and I know it's later on in the week, but what do you think about Lincoln Riley, basically fumbling in the bag there? He had those guys dead to rights. What do you think about Lincoln Riley in their first Big Ten game?
It was unbelievable. It was almost like, and I say this jokingly, but it did feel like this. It was like USC got the memo at halftime. Oh, Michigan really can't throw. Oh, that wasn't just a joke?
Yeah.
No, you guys didn't watch the film? It's like then they adjusted, like, oh, maybe we should stack the box. Michigan got 14-0 like in the first half, and it was like game over pretty much then because I couldn't believe that was the worst defensive game plan I've ever seen in football. It's like they finally adjusted in the second half. Then they did break that long run late, but up until then, Michigan couldn't do anything in the second half. Once USC got the lead, I thought they were going to win, but that's why you can't leave Michigan hanging around. They should have put them away. But Lincoln Riley cannot field a competent defense to save his life.
This is why I said bad coaching is one, the adjustments need to be happening faster now. It's not like that you went into that game and you watch anything remotely when it came to Alec Orji on tape that says, hey, we're not going to put 9 in a box off rip. After the coin toss, 9 in a box. Because I need to see this kid beat me over the top before you pull me out of that type of defense. So you go into that first half, and Michigan's kind of setting the tempo. They're doing what they do best. They're milking the clock. They're sitting on the football. They're running. They're getting in short yardage, and they're keeping their offense on the field. Why does it take you that long to adjust, especially when you got the live tablets on the sidelines now? At that point, if you're coming out and saying, okay, they got their scripted plays off their first 15, they're going to resort back to who they truly are, which is 99% running the football. I think Alex Orgy's like air yards or something like that was only like 2 yards down the field. Like they did not trust this kid to throw. Like everything was at the line of scrimmage type of throws. And this kid was proving to you that he couldn't throw it, and they still didn't adjust. Like at that point, when you're up, Dave, I'm putting 10 in the box. I'm stopped 9 in the box, whatever it takes. But my goodness. And Lincoln Riley, his time management, you had the opportunity to put them away when you were up. You got the football back with probably like 4 minutes, 5 minutes to go in the game, and he throws like 2 screen passes into the dirt. I'm like, what are you doing? Like at minimum, run the football and make them have to burn their timeouts. It was a terrible job by Lincoln Riley. That USC talked all that smacked about how much weight they put on up front in the trenches, but they still weren't ready for Big Ten play, especially their offensive line.
A lot of people saw USC go down and beat LSU. Like, oh, USC's back. Not factoring LSU stinks this year.
Yeah.
So
Before we get out of here, what do you think about Illinois' 18-point dogs at Penn State?
I can't figure that out. Of course, when you can't figure out a bet, you think for sure you know more than Vegas. Maybe you should back off. Like me with Michigan and USC last week. I was like, how is USC only favored by 4.5? Now we know. Yeah. How is Illinois an 18.5-point underdog when they have a good defense? They have a good quarterback in Altmaier. I'm not saying he's great, but he's good. And Penn State, I mean, Bowling Green, Penn State's been okay, but like they didn't look good against Bowling Green. Granted, Bowling Green looks good this year. I don't understand that at all because Illinois' defense will travel. They've got a good quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Illinois is going to cover that spread. I expect a good game. So watch Penn State win by 50 now that I said that.
I know it. It totally feels like this is one of the games where Vegas is baiting everybody to take Illinois here, because you look at Illinois and they've had 2 ranked wins against Kansas, who was ranked coming in at the time, and then at Nebraska on the road. I feel like this is a game that Illinois can actually probably win outright. You remember the last time they played at Penn State? That was like the first time where they changed the overtime rules, and it was like 6 overtimes, 7 overtimes, and Bert's squad went up there and pulled up the major upset. But yeah, that's one game I'm looking at. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
I'm with you. Okay, I want to get you out of here on this. What do you think about Georgia, Alabama? Great that's on at the exact same time as Ohio State, right? But what do you think of that matchup?
Yeah, that's going to be a great one. I'm not impressed with this Georgia team, Dave. I think they're a better version of Michigan when you watch Georgia against Kentucky, but Georgia actually has a quarterback there. They're very average in explosive plays as far as Georgia. When you look at their numbers, you dig into their actual physical numbers. They're very average when it comes to the explosive plays. They're definitely missing some of the playmakers that they lost last year going to the NFL here. I think Kalen DeBoer here, when it comes to the X's and O's, he might be able to dial up something against Kirby Smart. I like Alabama. Anytime you can start getting points against Alabama at home here, I'm going to take them. I don't know which Georgia team is going to show up, because if it's the Georgia team that played on the road against Kentucky, then Alabama should beat them. But I'm very, very skeptical about how Georgia offense is as far as being able to generate explosive plays. I don't think they have any elite playmakers on the outside. That's why I say, hey, Michigan and Georgia are very similar. Stout on defense, heck of a defense here. But when you look at their offense, not a lot on the perimeter. They're going to have a solid running game, but Georgia has a much, much better quarterback here. I'm taking Alabama. I think Bama's going to roll here, Dave.
Yeah, especially getting, Alabama being a home dog, I'll probably stay away from it. But if I end up putting a little cash on it, I would take Alabama if I was betting on this game. Now, Nick Saban did say he's taking Georgia until proven otherwise, but who knows?
I
sure he
think
does
that's Nick Saban, pulling the whole reverse psychology thing because he has an office still there. And the one thing that people forget about Alabama, they think Nick Saban's off on his boat. He does the college game day and everything, but he also still has an office at Alabama. I think they're paying him something like $250,000 a year to be an advisor. So he's still around the building. That's like Urban Meyer would be sitting in on meetings, getting paid, $250,000 to sit in on meetings right now and helping Ryan Day through his journey as a head coach there. So Nick Saban's still there. That to me sounds like some reverse psychology from the old GOAT, man.
I think you're right. And by the way, that's a great deal for Alabama. You get the GOAT to stick around for $250,000. Like that's a good deal right there. J-Book is always a good deal. Great stuff as always, my friend.
All
Great
right.
stuff from Jonah Booker. Yeah, you need to get out of here. Go ahead, my man.
I was just going to say, I'll talk to you next week and go Bucks.
Sounds good, buddy. Appreciate your time.
All right.
There he goes. Jonah Booker. He's great. He's fantastic. I see why you guys all love him so much. And J-Book and I have done these Friday shows for like over a decade now. I don't know. It's love having him on the show. I love that he comes on every Friday. He's going to be on the post-game show at times. I haven't asked him to come on tomorrow's yet, but I'll probably bug him, see if he can hop on a little bit late night. It's not going to be as late for J-Book, though, being out there in Arizona. It's going to be a pretty late night for us. But I can't wait for the game tomorrow night. Again, join me for What We Learned Live right after the game. I'll definitely have Patrick Murphy and Steve Hellwagon on near the end of the show from Spartan Stadium after post-game press conferences. And I'll get some of my cohorts to join me early in the show. We'll see if J-Book's busy. I'll try and get J-Book on, but hopefully you guys can join me for that. Thanks very much to J-Book. Thanks very much to all of you. Hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy the game tomorrow, Buckeyes. Bucknutters. Go Bucks.